An entire Amish family of 7 vanished from their Pennsylvania farm in 1992, leaving behind only a simple note about visiting relatives for the weekend. But they never returned. 10 years later, during a remembrance service, the community looks through old items and spots a shocking detail that everyone had missed, a clue that would finally expose what happened to them. The morning sun cast long shadows across the wooden floorboards of Levi Lapp's home in New Holland, Pennsylvania. It was a day that came every year, marked not by celebration, but by solemn remembrance. 10 years. A full decade had passed since his brother Aaron, sister-in-law Miriam, and their 5 children, Eli, Michael, Sarah, Ruth, and little Daisy, had vanished without explanation beyond a simple note left on their kitchen table. Levi adjusted one of the wooden chairs that had replaced his usual living room furniture. The transformation of his home for today's service had begun before dawn. Where his comfortable sofa usually sat, neat rows of simple chairs now faced the front of the room. The coffee table had been moved to the barn, making space for the gathering that would soon fill his home. The service had begun at 8 o'clock sharp, with members of their old order Amish community filing in quietly. Men in their black suits and broad-brimmed hats, women in their prayer coverings and dark dresses. For 2 hours they had prayed, sung hymns in Pennsylvania Dutch, and shared memories of the Lapp family. Minister Yoder had spoken eloquently about faith in times of trial, about accepting God's will even when understanding eluded them. Now, as the clock on the mantel showed past 10, the formal service had concluded. Most of the congregation had departed, returning to their farms and daily duties. Only a small circle remained, close family, dear friends, and a few community elders who had known Aaron since childhood. Levi looked around the diminished gathering. His cousins, Samuel and Rebecca Byler, sat close together, Samuel's beard now showing gray that hadn't been there 10 years ago. Mary Stoltzfus, who had been Miriam's closest friend, dabbed at her eyes with a white handkerchief. Old Joseph King, whose farm bordered Aaron's abandoned property, stared at his folded hands. "Shall we?" Levi asked softly, gesturing toward the kitchen table they had moved to the center of the remaining chairs. The group drew closer, forming a tight circle. On the table lay an arrangement of precious artifacts, photographs, personal belongings, and at the very center, protected by a clear plastic sleeve, the note that had changed everything. Levi picked up the note with careful hands, though he had memorized every word years ago. Written in Aaron's careful script, it read, "Gone for the weekend. Visiting family for church matters. Will return Monday. Don't worry about the animals. Arranged for neighbor boys to help. Aaron." "Every year we read this," Mary said softly. "Every year I wonder what church matters could have taken them away so suddenly." "And which family?" Samuel added. "We are their family." The community checked with every relative, every connection in Ohio, Indiana, even up to Ontario. No one saw them. Esther reached for a photograph, one taken just days before the disappearance. It showed the whole family on their front porch, Aaron, tall and bearded, in his straw hat, Miriam beside him, holding baby Daisy, the other children arranged by height, all smiling in their simple clothes. Behind them, laundry fluttered on the line. "Such beautiful children," she whispered. Eli would be 23 now, Michael 21, Sarah 19, Ruth 14, and little Daisy. Her voice broke. Daisy would be 10. Levi picked up the manila folder that contained copies of the police reports. The official investigation had been brief, hampered by the community's reluctance to involve outside authorities beyond the initial report. After a week of questioning neighbors and finding no signs of foul play, the case had been marked as a voluntary disappearance, and eventually went cold. "We did what we thought best," Joseph King said, perhaps reading Levi's thoughts. "We are not a people who run to the English police with our troubles. We believed they would return." "But they didn't," Rebecca said quietly. "And now we gather each year, wondering if we should have done more." Daniel Zook, another community member, reached for one of the photos from the police file. He studied it intently, his brow furrowing. It was the same porch photograph Esther had been holding, but this was the official police copy, slightly larger and clearer. "Levi," Daniel said slowly, "your brother's family. They were planning to leave that morning for the weekend, yes?" "That's what the note said," Levi replied, confused by the question. "Why?" Daniel turned the photograph toward the group and pointed at the laundry line visible in the background. "Look here, fresh washing hanging on the line. See how the clothes are still dark with moisture at the bottom? This was taken in the morning, as you said." "So?" Samuel asked. "So why would Miriam do laundry on the morning they were leaving for the entire weekend? The clothes would be ruined by rain, eaten by bugs, faded by sun. No good Amish housewife would leave washing out for 3 days." The group leaned in closer, examining the photograph with new interest. Mary gasped softly. "There, is that a vest? It looks too bright to be plain clothing." Levi squinted at the photograph. Among the dark blues and blacks of typical Amish clothing hung something fluorescent yellow-green. His heart skipped as he recognized what it was. "That's a police vest." "Police?" Esther's voice was sharp with surprise. "Officer Brenner," Levi said slowly, memory returning. "Paul Brenner. He was close with Aaron, helped our community often. Fixed fences, assisted with barn raisings when he was off duty. A good Englishman who respected our ways." "I remember him," Joseph nodded. "Always polite, never pushed us to modernize. But why would his vest be in Miriam's washing?" Levi studied the photograph more carefully. The vest was clearly visible now that they knew what to look for, the word police, partially visible on the bright fabric. "I don't remember him ever getting it back," Levi said. "After Aaron disappeared and the investigation ended, Officer Brenner still came around sometimes, checking on us, on Mother. But I don't recall him asking about a vest." "My Ribka, may she rest in peace," Levi continued, referring to his late wife who had died 3 years prior. "She packed away many of Aaron and Miriam's belongings after it became clear they weren't returning. Perhaps the vest is still with their things." Esther set down the photograph with trembling hands. "Perhaps we should speak to Officer Brenner about this. It may mean nothing, but after 10 years, any small thing might help us understand." "Mother," Levi said gently, "what could he do now?" "It's been a decade. The English police put the case aside long ago. We chose not to pursue it further ourselves, to accept God's will in this matter." "But we never found peace with it," Mary interjected. "We say we accept, but we gather each year because we cannot let go. Maybe God's will includes us finally seeking answers." "I'll find the vest," Levi decided. "If nothing else, I should return it to Officer Brenner. It's only right. When I do, perhaps I'll mention this observation about the laundry. See what he says?" The group murmured agreement. They spent another half-hour looking through the remaining photographs and mementos, Aaron's favorite hymnal, Miriam's quilting thimble, drawings the children had made, a corn-husk doll that had belonged to Sarah. Each item was handled with reverence, passed from hand to hand, accompanied by a memory or a prayer. Finally, as the clock neared noon, the gathering began to disperse. Each family member and friend embraced Levi and Esther, murmuring words of comfort that had been repeated so many times they had worn smooth like river stones. "We'll see you at church on Sunday," Samuel said, settling his black hat on his head. "Thank you for hosting this year," Rebecca added. "It means much to remember them in a home, not just the meeting house." "It was Mother's idea," Levi said, glancing at Esther. She thought perhaps being here, where Aaron spent so much time, might bring us closer to understanding. One by one, the buggies rolled away down the gravel drive until only Levi and his mother remained. Esther began gathering the photographs and papers, her movements careful and deliberate. "I'll help you put the furniture back," she offered. "No, Mother, rest. I'll take you home and handle this myself later." Levi went to the kitchen drawer. His fingers found the familiar weight of 2 brass keys on a simple ring, one for Aaron's house, one for the abandoned farmhouse on the separate parcel of land Aaron had owned. They felt cold in his palm, unused for months. They walked to his buggy. One of the few concessions to the modern world their ordnung allowed was that Levi kept a car for his furniture-making business. Levi helped her into the car, his own heart heavy with the weight of another year passed without answers. As they drove the short distance to his mother's small dotty house on the family property, he couldn't shake the image of that police vest hanging among his sister-in-law's washing, a bright, incongruous note in what should have been an ordinary morning a decade ago. After dropping his mother at her small house, Levi decided to drive to Aaron's house right away. It only took him 10 minutes along the rural roads. Levi had avoided coming here lately. The sight of the empty property never failed to stir up difficult emotions. As he pulled into the overgrown driveway, he noticed how the maple tree Aaron had planted the year before his disappearance now towered over the porch, its branches scraping against the roof in places. The key turned stiffly in the lock. Inside, the air was stale and heavy with dust. Pale rectangles on the walls showed where pictures had once hung. Ribka had packed most of the valuable and personal items after the first year, when hope of the family's return had begun to fade. Levi started his search in the obvious places. The hallway closet yielded nothing but mouse droppings and a few wire hangers. The storage room off the kitchen, where Miriam had kept her canning supplies, stood empty except for dusty shelves. He climbed the narrow stairs, each step creaking under his weight. The master bedroom door stood ajar. The bed frame remained, stripped of its mattress years ago, but there, at the foot of the bed, sat a wooden chest he remembered. Levi knelt beside it and lifted the lid. The hinges protested, but held. Inside, Ribka had carefully arranged items that must have seemed too personal to discard, but too painful to keep in daily view. A man's work shirt still bearing the shape of Aaron's shoulders, a child's wooden toy horse worn smooth from handling, and there, folded neatly on top, the fluorescent police vest. He lifted it carefully. Police was emblazoned across the back in reflective letters, and on the front a small patch read P. Brenner in neat stitching. The vest was clean, carefully washed and dried by Miriam 10 years ago. Levi closed the chest gently and stood, the vest in his hands. He pulled out his cell phone, another accommodation to business necessity, and scrolled to Officer Brenner's personal number. They had exchanged contact information years ago when Brenner had helped investigate some vandalism at the furniture shop. The phone rang 4 times before going to voicemail. Brenner's familiar voice asked him to leave a message. Levi ended the call without speaking. The thought of explaining this over a recording felt wrong somehow. He considered calling the police station directly, but hesitated. The Amish relationship with English law enforcement was complicated, respectful but distant. The thought of navigating a phone tree, explaining himself to a dispatcher, possibly being transferred multiple times. No, better to handle this in person, face to face, as was their way. Levi tucked the vest under his arm and made his way back downstairs. He locked the house and started toward his car, then stopped. Something nagged at him, an old conversation with Aaron years before the disappearance. His brother had mentioned pressure from developers, people wanting to buy the land for some project. Levi circled around to the back of the house, curious if anything had come of those plans. The view from the back porch showed unchanged farmland stretching to the horizon. Whatever development had been planned, it had never materialized. The same split-rail fences marked property lines. The same grove of oak trees stood sentinel at the far edge of what had been Aaron's land. 10 years, and nothing had changed. Levi made his way back to his car, placing the vest carefully on the passenger seat. He made a mental note to check the farmhouse. The properties couldn't stand abandoned forever. The New Holland police station was a modest brick building on the edge of town, its American flag snapping in the afternoon breeze. Levy parked carefully and walked through the glass doors, the fluorescent vest tucked under his arm. The interior smelled of coffee and floor wax, and a young officer sat behind a reception desk. "Good afternoon," Levi said, approaching the desk. "I'm looking for Officer Paul Brenner. Is he available?" The desk officer, whose nameplate read Jenkins, looked up from his computer screen. "Brenner? He's been out in the field since about noon. Can I help you with something or take a message?" Levi shifted the vest in his hands. "It's a personal matter. I have something that belongs to him from a while ago. When do you expect him back?" Jenkins shrugged. "Hard to say with field duty. Could be an hour, could be end of shift. I can take your information and have him call you." "No, thank you," Levi said. "I'll try again later. It's something I'd prefer to handle in person." "Suit yourself," Jenkins said, already turning back to his screen. "He's usually here mornings if you want to try tomorrow." Levi nodded and left the station. Back in his car, he sat for a moment, considering his options. The farmhouse still needed checking, and he was already out this way. He could return to the station later in the afternoon or perhaps tomorrow morning. He drove out of town, taking the winding road that led to the more rural properties. Aaron's farmhouse sat on 40 acres of good land, separate from the house property, about 15 minutes further into the countryside. He was about halfway there, passing through a stretch of Amish farms, when he noticed something wrong at the Yoder property. Two men in dark uniforms stood by a black truck, and Jakob Yoder was backing away from them, his hands raised in a defensive gesture. Levi pulled over immediately and got out of his car. As he walked closer, he could hear raised voices. "Told you yesterday and the day before," Jakob was saying in accented English. "This land is not for sale. It has been in my family for generations." "Times change, Mr. Yoder," one of the uniformed men said. His uniform was strange, dark blue or black, but with no department patches, no badge numbers, no identification of any kind. "The offer we're making is more than generous. You could buy land elsewhere, better land." "There is no better land than what God has given us to tend," Jakob replied firmly. "Please leave my property." The second man stepped closer to Jakob, his posture threatening. "You Amish think you can just sit on valuable real estate forever, contributing nothing to progress, to the economy?" "Is there a problem here?" Levi called out, walking faster now. All three men turned. Jakob's face showed relief at seeing a familiar face. The two uniformed men exchanged glances. "No problem," the first man said smoothly. "Just a business discussion." "Doesn't look like Mr. Yoder is interested in your business," Levi said, positioning himself beside Jakob. "He's asked you to leave." The second man's jaw tightened. "And you are?" "A neighbor, and someone who's about to call the police if you don't respect this man's wishes to be left alone." Levi pulled out his cell phone, making sure they could see it. The two men looked at each other again. The first one reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card, tossing it on the ground at Jakob's feet. "Think about our offer, Mr. Yoder. We'll be back." They walked to their truck with deliberate slowness, as if to show they weren't intimidated. Levi memorized the license plate as they drove away, though the truck bore no company logos or identifying marks. "Thank you, Levi," Jakob said once they were gone, bending to pick up the business card. "They have been here every day this week, always the same, wanting to buy my land, getting more insistent each time." "What do they want it for?" Levi asked. Jakob shrugged. "They speak of development, progress, making better use of the land, but they give no specifics." He paused, looking troubled. "You know, something like this happened before, about 10 years ago. Different men, but same pressure, same vague talk of development. Then it stopped suddenly." Levi felt a chill despite the warm afternoon. 10 years ago? Around the time my brother disappeared? "Yes, now that you mention it. Maybe a few months before. Aaron had men visiting him too, I remember. He was worried about it, talked to the bishop. Then—" Jakob trailed off, not wanting to mention the disappearance directly. "These men," Levi said, "did they say what company they represent?" Jakob handed him the business card. It was plain white with only a phone number and the words Land Development Associates in simple black text. No names, no address. "I'm actually on my way to speak with Officer Brenner about another matter," Levi said. "I'll mention this to him. He's always been a friend to our community. Maybe he can look into whether these men have the right to harass you like this." "I would appreciate that," Jakob said, "though I doubt the English law can do much if they're just asking to buy. Still, it would be good for the police to know." Levi looked down the road where the truck had disappeared. "Be careful, Jakob. Maybe make sure you're not alone when they come back. Have your sons or neighbors nearby." "I will. Thank you again, Levi. God bless you." Levi walked back to his car, troubled by this encounter. As he continued driving toward Aaron's farmhouse, he couldn't shake the feeling that the past was stirring, that old secrets were struggling toward the light. The entrance to Aaron's farmhouse property was marked by two weathered stone pillars that had stood for over a century. As Levi slowed to turn in, he noticed a police patrol car parked on the opposite side of the road, engine idling. The driver's window was down, and through it he could see a familiar figure in sunglasses. Officer Paul Brenner. Levi pulled over and parked, then walked across the quiet road. As he approached, Brenner removed his sunglasses, revealing tired eyes that crinkled with recognition. "Levi Lapp," Brenner said warmly. "Good to see you. How are you holding up?" "Hello, Officer Brenner. I'm well, thank you." Levi glanced around the empty road. "Are you stationed here today? Seems unusual for someone of your seniority to be on patrol duty." Brenner chuckled. "Just keeping an eye on the area. Happened to be passing by and saw Aaron's old place." His expression grew more solemn. "Hard to believe it's been 10 years. I still think about that case sometimes." "That's kind of you to remember," Levi said, touched by the sentiment. "Actually, I was looking for you at the station earlier today. I have something to discuss with you about Aaron's case." "Oh?" Brenner's eyebrows rose slightly. "Yes, I found something of yours at Aaron's house." Levi walked back to his car and retrieved the vest. "This was in a chest with other belongings. I believe it's yours?" Brenner took the vest, examining it with a puzzled expression. "A vest? I don't—" He turned it over, saw his name stitched on the patch, and his face cleared. "Oh, yes, right. This is mine. Completely forgot about it after all these years." "How did it end up at my brother's house?" Levi asked. Brenner handed the vest back through the window and rubbed his jaw thoughtfully. "It was that morning, the morning they left. I had stopped by to discuss something with Aaron, and Miriam, being the kind soul she was, invited me in for breakfast. Wouldn't take no for an answer. You know how she was." Levi nodded, remembering his sister-in-law's legendary hospitality. "Well, clumsy me. I managed to spill vegetable soup all over my vest. Miriam insisted on washing it for me, said it would stain if left. I protested, of course, but—" Brenner shrugged. "You didn't argue with Miriam Lapp when she decided to help you." "I never heard about this visit," Levi said slowly. "May I ask what you were discussing with Aaron that morning?" Something flickered across Brenner's face. Was it nervousness? "Oh, it's been so long. I think it was something about neighborhood safety. There were some development plans in the area that had residents concerned." "Development plans?" Levi leaned closer. "Aaron did mention something about that to me once. Private developers wanting to build a road through the back of his property?" "That's right," Brenner said, seeming to relax slightly. "There was a company pushing hard to buy up land for some project. The community was worried, and the police department worked with local officials to put the project on hold. I was probably checking in with Aaron about any safety concerns, making sure no one was pressuring him unduly." Levi thought of Jakob Yoder's frightened face from just minutes ago. Speaking of pressure, I just came from Jakob Yoder's farm. 2 men in dark uniforms were there, trying to force him to sell his land. They've been harassing him all week. Brenner's expression tightened. Dark uniforms? No company identification? None that I could see. They left when I threatened to call the police, but they said they'd be back. Levi pulled out the business card. They left this, Land Development Associates, but just a phone number. Brenner took the card, studied it briefly, then handed it back. I'll look into it, talk to Jakob myself. We can't have people intimidating our Amish neighbors. I'd appreciate that. The community trusts you, Officer Brenner. You've always been good to us. Brenner was about to respond when his gaze shifted to something beyond Levi's shoulder. His whole demeanor changed, becoming alert and focused. Levi turned to see a black truck approaching from the direction of town, the same truck from Jakob Yoder's farm. Listen, Levi, Brenner said quickly, starting his engine. I'll definitely follow up on this, talk to Jakob, and we should discuss your brother's case more. There might be connections worth exploring. But right now, I have an important meeting I can't miss. Of course, Levi said, stepping back. Thank you for your time. Thank you for returning the vest, Brenner called out as he pulled onto the road. Take care, Levi. Levi watched the patrol car follow the black truck at a discreet distance. It seemed Brenner was already investigating the men who had threatened Jakob. He felt reassured knowing the officer was taking immediate action. He drove through the farmhouse gates, noting how the gravel driveway was now more weeds than stone. The farmhouse itself stood like a tired sentinel, its white paint peeling, shutters hanging askew. The for sale sign he'd posted 5 years after the disappearance leaned at an angle, weather-beaten and faded. In 5 years, only a handful of people had shown interest, and none had followed through with an offer. The property was beautiful despite its neglect, 40 acres of prime farmland with a sturdy barn, and the 2-story farmhouse Aaron had lovingly maintained. But the Amish community was insular, and English buyers often felt uncomfortable purchasing property in the heart of plain country. Meanwhile, most Amish families already had their own land or couldn't afford the asking price. Levi parked and entered the house with his key. Dust particles danced in the afternoon light, streaming through dirty windows. He found cleaning supplies in the pantry, miraculously still usable, and began the task of making the kitchen presentable. He was sweeping mouse droppings from the corners when he heard a car pull into the driveway. Through the window, he saw a sedan he didn't recognize. A man in business attire emerged, studied the for sale sign, then walked toward the house. Levi met him at the door. "Good afternoon," the man said with a practiced smile. "I noticed the for sale sign. Is this property still available?" "Yes, it is," Levi confirmed. "I'm the owner. Well, managing it for the family." "Excellent. I'm very interested. May I look around?" Levi gestured him inside. "Of course, though I should warn you, it needs work. It's been empty for some years." The man walked through the rooms with quick, assessing eyes. He seemed less interested in the house's condition than in something else. He kept looking out windows, checking sight lines, nodding to himself. "What's your asking price?" he finally asked. Levi named the figure he'd settled on 5 years ago, fair market value for the land and buildings. The man laughed. "For this condition, I'll give you half that." "That's well below the land value alone," Levi protested. "The acreage is in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by Amish farms. Limited development potential. Half your asking price is generous." Levi felt conflicted. The offer was insulting, but the property had sat vacant so long. Every month meant more deterioration, more expense. "I could perhaps come down 15%, but—" "I'll meet you in the middle," the man interrupted, pulling out a map from his jacket. "Let me show you my plans for the property." He spread the map on the dusty kitchen counter. Levi saw the farmhouse property outlined in red with various development notations, but his attention was caught by another marking, a circled area in the mountain region to the north, marked with symbols he didn't understand. "What's this?" Levi asked, pointing to the mountain marking. The man glanced at where Levi was pointing and quickly folded that section of the map under. "Nothing related to this property. Now, about the farmhouse. I'm thinking of converting it to a country retreat, maybe a bed and breakfast to cater to tourists interested in Amish country." He continued talking, but Levi found himself distracted by that glimpse of the mountain marking. Something about it nagged at him, though he couldn't say why. After more negotiation, they settled on a price that was less than Levi hoped, but more than the initial insulting offer. It would be enough to pay off the remaining taxes and provide something for his mother. "Excellent," the man said, producing a business card. "Come to my office and we'll draw up the paperwork. Can you follow me there now? I'd like to move quickly on this." Levi hesitated. Something felt rushed, but he'd been trying to sell for 5 years. "All right, lead the way." He locked the farmhouse and got into his car. He followed the sedan down the country road. The office building appeared suddenly around a bend in the road, its modern glass and steel construction jarring against the pastoral landscape. It stood alone in what had once been a cornfield, surrounded by a large parking lot that seemed excessive for such a remote location. Levi followed the buyer's sedan into the lot and parked beside it. "Impressive facility," Levi commented as they walked toward the entrance, though privately he found the building cold and unwelcoming. "We believe in making a statement," the man replied, holding the door open. "Professional environment for professional dealings." The interior was all polished floors and minimalist furniture. At a reception desk sat a woman in a dark uniform, the same style as the men who had threatened Jakob Yoder, Levi realized with a start. No company logo, no identifying patches. "This is Mr. Lapp," the buyer told her. "He needs visitor registration." "Of course," she said, sliding a form across the desk. "I'll need your driver's license and signature here, here, and here." The buyer checked his watch. "I'll go prepare the contracts. My office is just down the hall when you're finished." He strode away, leaving Levi with the receptionist. Levi fumbled for his license, unaccustomed to such formal procedures. In his world, deals were sealed with handshakes and trust. As the woman typed his information into her computer, movement outside caught his eye. Through the large window facing the parking lot, he saw the black truck from earlier pulling in. Behind it, Officer Brenner's patrol car followed at a distance. But instead of stopping, both vehicles continued past the building, heading up the mountain road that curved behind the property. "Ma'am," Levi said, "what's up that mountain road?" She glanced up briefly from her typing. "I wouldn't know. You'd have to ask Mr. Davidson about that." "Mr. Davidson, that's the gentleman buying my property?" "Yes." She returned to her screen, clearly uninterested in conversation. While waiting for her to finish, Levi wandered toward a display area near the windows. A large architectural model sat under glass, a miniature representation of development plans. He leaned closer, recognizing the topography immediately. There was the mountain. There was the valley where the Amish community had lived for generations. There were the winding roads he'd driven all his life. But in the model, everything was different. Where Amish farms now stood, the model showed commercial buildings, housing developments, shopping centers, his own home, his mother's house, Aaron's properties, Jakob Yoder's farm, all replaced by modern structures. Roads cut through previously untouched land. Only one area remained undeveloped in the model, a spot on the mountain marked with what appeared to be a church or memorial building. Levi studied the small placard beside it. Amish Heritage Memorial, preserving the memory of Pennsylvania's plain people. Memory. Not presence, memory, as if they were already gone. His blood ran cold as he recognized the spot on the mountain. It was the same location marked on the buyer's map earlier. He looked out the window again, where dust from the vehicles lingered in the air. Was that where Brenner was heading? "Sir, I need you to sign these forms." "Actually," Levi said, backing toward the door, "I just remembered something urgent. Please tell Mr. Davidson. I'll need to reschedule." Her eyes narrowed. "He's waiting for you. He's prepared all the paperwork." "I'll come back later today. Tomorrow at the latest. I'm sorry." "Sir, Mr. Davidson doesn't like to be kept waiting." But Levi was already pushing through the door. Behind him, he heard her pick up the phone, speaking urgently to someone. He jogged to his car, started the engine, and pulled out of the parking lot quickly. The mountain road was rougher than the main routes, designed for logging trucks and maintenance vehicles rather than regular traffic. Levi's car bounced over potholes and washboard surfaces as he climbed higher. The afternoon sun filtered through the canopy of trees, creating a strobe effect that made him squint. He didn't know exactly what he expected to find, but every instinct told him he needed to see what was happening on that mountain. The model's memorial to the Amish, the renewed pressure on landowners, Brenner's strange behavior, the connection to events from 10 years ago. It all swirled in his mind like pieces of a puzzle, refusing to fit together. The mountain road grew steeper and more isolated with each mile. Levi's car strained against the grade, and he had to downshift twice to maintain speed. The trees pressed close on both sides, their branches forming a tunnel of green overhead. For nearly an hour he climbed, passing no other vehicles, seeing no signs of habitation except the occasional utility pole marking the route. Finally, the road leveled out into a cleared area. Through the thinning trees, Levi spotted Officer Brenner's patrol car parked near a construction fence. He pulled off into a small turnout, partially hidden by brush, killed the engine, and stepped out into the mountain air. The construction site sprawled before him, larger than he'd expected. Heavy equipment sat idle for the moment, a bulldozer, an excavator, stacks of lumber and stone. The structure taking shape was indeed designed to look like an Amish meeting house, but grander, more elaborate than any real plain building would be. It was a tourist's idea of Amish architecture, all peaked roofs and decorative touches that no actual Amish community would approve. Levi moved closer, keeping to the tree line. Through the chain-link fence, he could see Brenner standing with the two men from Jakob Yoder's farm. Their voices carried on the mountain breeze. "Memorial House will be perfect," one of the men was saying. "Preserve the memory of Amish culture in this region. Tourists love that kind of thing. They'll come by the busload to see authentic Amish heritage." "Sympathetic narrative," the other added. "How the simple Amish way of life couldn't survive modern pressures. Very touching. Very marketable." Brenner nodded. "The development can proceed once the remaining families are convinced to relocate. How long before—" "This is a long-term project," the first man interrupted. "We've waited 10 years already. We can wait a little longer. But with your help, officer, we can be more persuasive this time." "These stubborn Amish," the second man said, shaking his head. "They don't understand progress, don't appreciate what we're offering. Sometimes I think the only way to deal with them is—" He stopped, looked around as if checking for listeners, then laughed. "Well, let's just say this place is built on Amish bones. Literally. We've got them stored right here." Levi's stomach lurched. He pressed closer to the fence, straining to hear. "Come," the first man said to Brenner. "Let us show you something." They walked deeper into the construction site. Levi's eyes darted around, spotted a hard hat and safety vest hanging on a fence post, probably left by a worker on break. Without thinking, he grabbed them, put them on, and slipped through an opening in the fence. The vest was too large, the hard hat loose on his head, but from a distance he might pass for a construction worker. He kept his head down and walked purposefully, following the trio at a distance. They stopped at the far side of the half-completed building where the foundation had been poured, but walls were only partially erected. One of the men called to a nearby worker operating a small backhoe. "Dig here," he instructed, pointing to a spot marked with orange spray paint. "Not deep, maybe 3 feet." The worker looked confused but complied. The backhoe's bucket bit into the earth, pulling away soil and gravel. After only a few scoops, the operator stopped, peering down at something. "That's enough," the first man said. He and his companion climbed down into the shallow excavation. Levi crept closer, using a stack of lumber as cover. He watched in horror as one of the men reached down and pulled something from the dirt, a bone, unmistakably human, probably from a leg. The man handed it to Brenner, who took it without hesitation, turned it over in his hands, examining it, then dropped it back into the hole. "You see," the second man said, grinning. "We stored them here, the whole family, plus a few others who got too curious over the years." "There will be more in the future," the first added. "Once we clear out the remaining Amish, kill some if necessary, frighten the rest into leaving, this whole valley will be ours to develop. Shopping centers, housing developments, tourist attractions, something actually productive, not just farmland rotting in the hands of backwards people." "And you'll help us, won't you, officer?" the second man said to Brenner, "just like before. Your position, your reputation in the community, invaluable assets." Brenner nodded slowly. "The department trusts me to handle Amish affairs. They won't question my reports." Levi backed away, his whole body shaking. Aaron, Miriam, the children, here, under this obscene monument to their memory. He forced himself to move quietly, carefully, back the way he'd come. At the fence, he shed the hard hat and vest, leaving them where he'd found them. He ran to his car, started it, and drove back down the mountain as fast as he dared. His cell phone showed no signal at the construction site, but halfway down, 2 bars appeared. He pulled over, hands trembling as he dialed 911. "911, what's your emergency?" "My name is Levi Lapp," he said, forcing his voice steady. "I need to report a murder, multiple murders, and police corruption." "Sir, please calm down. What's your location?" Levi gave the mountain road markers he'd noted. "There's a construction site at the top. They're building a fake Amish memorial. I just witnessed them digging up human bones. Officer Paul Brenner is involved. He's corrupt. He's working with developers who killed my brother's family 10 years ago." "Sir, these are very serious accusations. Are you certain?" "I saw the bones," Levi's voice cracked. "I heard them talking about killing more Amish families. Please, you have to send someone. Dig where they dug. You'll find the evidence." "We're dispatching units now, sir. State police will also be notified, given the allegation of officer corruption. Please remain where you are." Levi waited, engine running, watching the road. Within 15 minutes, he heard sirens. Multiple police cars appeared, racing up the mountain. He followed them back up. At the construction site, organized chaos erupted. Police officers swarmed the area. Brenner emerged from the building, saw the police cars, and his face went white. As the 2 developers tried to get to their truck, Levi pulled his car across their path, blocking them. Brenner approached him, trying to maintain his authority. "Levi, what are you doing? Move your vehicle." "I saw everything," Levi said, getting out of his car. "The bones, my brother's family, maybe others. You helped murder them." "This is ridiculous," Brenner said. "Officers, this man is making wild accusations." But the newly arrived police were already moving. A sergeant Levi didn't recognize said, "Officer Brenner, we need you to step aside while we investigate. These are serious allegations." "This is a misunderstanding," Brenner protested. "This man is grief-stricken, imagining things." "Then you won't mind if we look around," the sergeant said. Teams of officers entered the construction site. Workers stepped back, confused and concerned. "There," Levi pointed to the excavation. "They dug there. The bones are there." 2 officers jumped down into the hole. Within moments, one called out, "Sergeant, we've got human remains here." Brenner turned to run. A sharp crack split the air. A warning shot fired into the sky. "Nobody move!" an officer shouted. Brenner froze. The 2 developers who had made it halfway to their truck stopped as well. Officers moved in, weapons drawn but pointed down. "Hands behind your head, on your knees." One by one, Brenner and the 2 men were handcuffed. Brenner's face was a mask of defeat as they led him to a patrol car. The developers tried to protest, claim innocence, demand lawyers, but the officers were professional and unmoved. "We need to go to their office," Levi told the sergeant. "The man trying to buy my farm, Davidson, he's part of this. He's at the office building at the foot of the mountain." The sergeant nodded. "We'll take care of it. You'll need to come to the station to give a full statement." The convoy of police vehicles wound back down the mountain, lights flashing but sirens silent now. At the modernist office building, more police cars converged. Officers entered while Levi waited outside. Through the glass walls he could see Davidson being placed in handcuffs, the receptionist's shocked face, papers being seized. As they prepared to leave for the police station, Levi looked back at the mountain. Somewhere up there, hidden for 10 years, his family lay in unhallowed ground. But they had been found. Finally, they had been found. The New Holland police station had never seen such activity. Officers moved with purpose through the corridors, and Levi watched through the Sally Port windows as Brenner was led inside, his uniform now a mockery of the trust it once represented. The two developers followed, their earlier arrogance replaced by sullen silence. Davidson came last, still in his business suit, his face pale with shock. A detective in a gray suit approached Levi. "Mr. Lapp, I'm Detective Sarah Chen from the State Police. We'll be handling this investigation given the circumstances. Would you come with me, please?" She led him to a small interview room, clean and spare, with just a table and chairs. A recording device sat between them. "I know this has been an overwhelming day," Detective Chen said gently, "but I need you to tell me everything from the beginning. Take your time." Levi started with the morning's remembrance service, his voice steady as he recounted discovering the vest in the photograph, finding it at Aaron's house, his attempt to return it to Brenner. He described the encounter at Jakob Yoder's farm, the strange meeting with Brenner on the road, the rushed property sale attempt, and finally what he'd witnessed at the mountain construction site. Detective Chen took notes, occasionally asking for clarification. When Levi finished, she set down her pen. "Mr. Lapp, can you tell me about the original investigation 10 years ago?" Levi shifted uncomfortably. "It was very brief, less than a week. Officer Brenner led it, said he was the liaison for Amish affairs. He asked questions, looked at the house, but—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "We Amish, we don't readily cooperate with outside authorities. It's not our way. Most in the community believed Aaron and his family left voluntarily, maybe to visit relatives, maybe to relocate. When they didn't return, we thought perhaps there had been some conflict we didn't know about, some reason they chose to stay away." "But your brother never mentioned plans to leave?" Well, he did mention pressure from a property company. They wanted to buy his land. He owned more than most in our community. Not that we have hierarchies exactly, but Aaron had inherited from our father and bought additional parcels over the years. He was substantial in terms of land ownership. Detective Chen nodded. "We found something at Davidson's office that might interest you. A journal. Very detailed records of their plans, including entries about Officer Brenner." Levi leaned forward. "Brenner was part of it?" "More than part of it. According to what we've read so far, he was the one who organized the kidnapping. He used his position, his trust in your community, to get close to your brother. The journal suggests Brenner was on their payroll for years, feeding them information about which families might sell, which were vulnerable." Levi felt sick. All those times Brenner had helped with barn raisings, had directed traffic during harvest, had shown respect for their ways. All of it a lie. "The officer we trusted most," he said quietly. "He ate at our tables, knew our children's names." "I'm sorry," Detective Chen said. "I know this is a terrible betrayal." What happened to my brother's family? Do you know yet?" "We'll know more after interrogations, but based on the journal and the evidence, we believe they were lured to a remote location, probably the mountain site where construction wouldn't begin for years. Your brother likely refused their final offer. Things escalated. And then, they had to silence the whole family, Levi finished, the children too, to leave no witnesses. That's our working theory. The DNA results will confirm if the remains are your family, but given that yours is the only Amish disappearance in this area in the past decade, it's highly probable. Did they ever get any land? Was it worth it to them? Detective Chen checked her notes. No town records show any sales to their company. After your brother's disappearance, it seems they pulled back, maybe worried about drawing attention. All those deaths for nothing? They waited 10 years to try again. Levi put his head in his hands. My brother fought them, and we never knew. If I had been here, I was in Ohio then, working. I only moved back after they vanished. If I had known about his struggle with these developers. You can't blame yourself, Detective Chen said firmly. The blame lies with the men who did this. We Amish live in acceptance, Levi said, raising his head. We believe in yielding to God's will, in not fighting the world. But sometimes that acceptance makes us blind to evil. We should have pushed harder 10 years ago, should have demanded real answers instead of accepting what Brenner told us. A knock at the door interrupted them. An officer peered in. Detective, the family member is here. A Mrs. Esther Lapp. My mother, Levi said, standing quickly. He found her in the corridor, her black bonnet slightly askew, her face drawn with fear and hope. Their eyes met, and she read the truth in his expression. No, she whispered. No, no, no. Levi caught her as she swayed. They're just bones, Mom. Just bones now. They held each other in the fluorescent-lit hallway, mother and son united in grief that was a decade old, but suddenly fresh. Other officers moved past them respectfully, giving them space for their sorrow. After a time, Detective Chen approached. Mr. and Mrs. Lapp, the forensics team has preliminary information, if you're ready. They were led to a family waiting room, more comfortable than the interview space, with softer chairs and tissue boxes on every surface. A woman in a lab coat entered, her expression professionally compassionate. I'm Dr. Martinez from the forensics department, she said. The remains we recovered are approximately 10 years old, based on decomposition and soil analysis. We found bones of various sizes, adult male, adult female, and children of different ages. Esther made a sound like a wounded animal. Levi gripped her hand. We'll need DNA samples from you both to confirm identity, Dr. Martinez continued, but the ages and numbers match your missing family members. Can we see? Esther asked, her voice barely audible. Dr. Martinez hesitated. They're not intact remains, Mrs. Lapp. But if you feel it would help, we can show you some of the evidence we've collected. They were led to another room where evidence bags lay on a sterile metal table. Bones, cleaned and tagged, fragments of fabric, a small shoe that might have fit a young child, personal effects that had survived a decade in the ground. Esther reached into her bag with shaking hands and pulled out a photograph, the same one from the remembrance service. Aaron and Miriam on the porch, the 5 children arranged by height, all of them smiling in the sunshine of a morning 10 years gone. She held it up, comparing the living faces to the remnants on the table. It's them, Esther whispered. My son, my grandchildren. They stood in that sterile room, looking at all that remained of a family that had laughed and prayed and worked together. Levi thought of all the years of wondering, of hope gradually fading to acceptance, of questions that had seemed destined to remain forever unanswered. Now they knew. The knowing was terrible, but it was also, somehow, a relief. No more wondering if Aaron had chosen to leave, if they had failed him somehow, if the family was out there somewhere, living a different life. They were here. They had never left. We'll find them a proper resting place, Levi said quietly. In the cemetery with the rest of our people. They'll come home. Esther nodded, tears streaming down her weathered face. She touched the photograph once more, then carefully returned it to her bag. They had found Aaron's family at last, and though the finding brought grief, it also brought the beginning of peace.